You're sitting alone in your own living room, fingers curled around the baby blanket you crocheted when your son was still small enough to fit in your arms. And from the kitchen, your kitchen you, hear your daughter-in-law spit out the words, "that woman," like you're a stranger cluttering up her space. You wait for your son to correct her, defend you, say anything. But he just laughs. A soft, embarrassed chuckle, like your dignity is some harmless joke. And that's when your chest sinks. Because you remember. Every double shift, every late-night bus ride, every holiday where you wrapped gifts with aching hands so he never had to know how close the bills were, cutting it. Do you remember promising yourself he would never feel abandoned? And now, in your own house, at your own table, you're being treated like an inconvenience. What do you even do when the boy you raised into a man lets his wife disrespect you in your own home? My name is Claire. I'm 61 years old, and I never expected to be the main character of a story that sounds like it crawled out of the most jaw-dropping corners of Reddit. People love to brush off family disrespect with excuses. She didn't mean it. It's just generational differences. But what happened to me wasn't confusion. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal wrapped in politeness, sprinkled with fake affection and text messages that always started with, "Love you, Mom," and ended with them using me. Like every messy, emotional, slow-burn descent you hear on those late-night AITA channels. It didn't begin with fireworks. It started with a tiny crack. I raised my son Daniel almost entirely on my own. His father walked out before Daniel even turned left a note on the counter and a half-paid electric bill, like some kind of parting gift. I remember standing there in the quiet kitchen, the refrigerator humming like it was the only thing keeping the house alive. I promised myself then that Daniel would never feel that kind of fear. So I hustled, and then hustled some more. I worked in a hospital cafeteria. I cleaned houses on weekends. I tutored kids in the evenings. And through it all, I tried to make sure Daniel never saw the cracks. When he wanted to join baseball, I found the money. When the school had trips, he went. I sacrificed winter coats, sleep, sanity, whatever it took. And he rewarded me in the sweetest ways only a child can. Crayon drawings, crooked hugs, whispered, "Thank you, Mom." Back then, it felt like love. I didn't realize I was teaching him that everything simply, peers. Then Daniel met Melissa. Pretty, polished, always camera ready. She called me Mrs. Carter for months, even after I told her she could call me Claire or even Mom if she ever felt comfortable. But she just gave that sugary laugh and said she didn't want to overstep. Ironic considering where she eventually placed her feet. The first real warning sign came during a family dinner I'd spent all day preparing baked chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of meal that meant something to us. Melissa strolled in late, eyes glued to her phone. I asked if she wanted more gravy, just trying to be warm, and she replied, "Oh, I'm trying to get Daniel to eat healthier. He gained a lot living with you." Then she laughed, like it was harmless. Daniel laughed too. Not loud, just that little chuckle of his. No defense. No, that's not okay. Just silence while my heart sank into my shoes. That night, as I washed the dishes alone, I overheard them in the living room. Melissa said, "If we move in here, we're redoing everything. This place is stuck in 1992. And my son." He said, "Yeah, but free rent is free rent. Free rent. My home, my safe place reduced to a financial shortcut." When the wedding planning began, the real entitlement came out in full color. Melissa's family had money, Instagram vacations, shiny cars, champagne weekends. And me, I was stable, finally. The house was paid off. I'd managed to build a quiet savings and a modest retirement. But I never bragged, never flaunted. I learned young that showing money makes people treat you differently, and not in the good way. So I kept my finances to myself. Little did I know that privacy would turn into ammunition. One night, Daniel came over alone. We were spread out at the kitchen table, wedding notes everywhere, when he suddenly leaned back and said, "So, Mom, how much can you contribute?" Melissa's parents are putting in 50 grand. I literally froze. $50,000. I nearly spat my coffee across the table. That was more than I used to make in an entire year. I told him gently I couldn't come anywhere close to that, but I'd help however I reasonably could, maybe the rehearsal dinner or their honeymoon flights. His jaw tightened. And for the first time, I saw something ugly flicker across his face. Disappointment. Entitlement. As if I had personally insulted him by not being wealthy. Melissa thinks it's only fair, he said. She says both sides should contribute equally. She doesn't want people thinking her parents care more than you do. Those words hit harder than anything. Because caring. I'd built my entire life around caring for that boy. I reminded him that love isn't measured in dollars, that I'd given him everything I had. He nodded, but his eyes drifted away. I'll talk to her, he said, flat, distant, the kind of tone that meant he wouldn't. The next time I saw Melissa was at a family barbecue. She was complaining loudly about venue costs, fully aware I was within earshot. If his mom would just step up, this wouldn't be so stressful, she said. Then, laughing to her friend, I mean, what else does she even do with her money? It's not like she has a life. My ears burned. My hands shook, but I swallowed it. I refused to start drama so close to the wedding. I thought being quiet made me the bigger person. I was wrong. A week later, Daniel sat me down again, this time holding a printed document and a pen. My stomach dropped. Mom, he said without meeting my eyes, Melissa's parents had this idea. Since your house is paid off, maybe you could take a small home equity loan to help with the wedding. You'd barely feel it. I stared at him, my son, the boy I once tucked into bed, suggesting I gamble my only safety net so his fiancée could throw a Pinterest-perfect party. I asked him if he remembered those years of counting coins at the checkout line. The nights the power almost got shut off. The sacrifices that built the home he now saw as leverage. He shifted, annoyed. You're overreacting, Mom. It's just money. Melissa says you'll always have us to take care of you later. And something inside me snapped quietly. Finally, I told him no. No apologies. No softening the blow. That makes me the bad guy? So be it. He actually looked offended. Her parents think it's weird you're so secretive about your finances, he said. They think you're being selfish. Selfish. After 30 years of scraping, stretching, surviving, selfish. But nothing prepared me for what came next. A few days later, I walked into my own home and found Melissa sitting at my kitchen table with a friend. My financial papers spread out in front of them, bank statements, retirement accounts, everything. Daniel had shown her where I kept them. Melissa looked up, completely unbothered. Oh, hey, Claire. We're just trying to get a clearer picture of what you can actually afford. Transparency is important in family, right? I saw red. I told her to put everything back immediately. She rolled her eyes and moved at a snail's pace, like she was humoring a tantrum-throwing child. We're trying to plan responsibly, she said. You're complicating things for no reason. Daniel came home later and acted annoyed that I was upset. They were just looking, he said. You're being dramatic. And suddenly, my life sounded exactly like one of those outrageous AITA stories I used to laugh at. After that, the disrespect snowballed. Melissa made constant jokes about how she and Daniel would inherit this place someday, and how she already planned to tear down these walls and modernize it. She'd stroll through my hallway, pointing at furniture, announcing what she would definitely get rid of, while I stood right there. If I tried to redirect the conversation, she'd sigh loudly. She's so sensitive, babe. It's just a house. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. Without asking me, they decided the rehearsal dinner would be hosted at my house. 30 people, full menu, everything. I found out because Melissa texted me a list of menu expectations followed by, "Be ready." When I told her I wasn't comfortable hosting that many people here, she absolutely lost it. She called me, her voice like ice, and said, "You know what, Claire? You're making this so hard. No wonder Daniel is always stressed after visiting you. You're stuck in this martyr complex." My hands were shaking when I held the phone, but my voice came out calm, calmer than it had any right to be. I told her, "If I'm such a burden, Melissa, you and Daniel are welcome to stop coming here." She scoffed, of course she did, because she didn't believe for a second that I meant it. Oh, please, she snapped. We're all family now. You need to get used to it. Times have changed. If you want to be part of our lives, you need to adapt. That word adapt hit me like a slap. I had spent my entire life adapting, bending, stretching myself to the point of breaking just to give my son everything he needed. And suddenly I was being told I wasn't flexible enough. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, the same table where I used to help Daniel with his homework, and I wrote down everything, every comment, every crossed boundary, every time I had swallowed my pride because I thought it's not worth the fight. Then I looked at the numbers, my savings, my retirement, my paid-off home, and for the first time in years, the fog lifted. I realized I wasn't stuck. I wasn't powerless. I had something they wanted. And I didn't owe any of it to anyone. The next day, I called Daniel and told him to come over alone. He arrived with that familiar, annoyed, bracing forum-packed look, like he was about to endure another lecture. We sat at that same table where I used to cut his grilled cheese into little squares, and I told him, as gently as I could, I love you. That will never change, but I will not be disrespected in my own home. Not by your wife, not by you. He rolled his eyes. I raised my hand to stop him. Then I laid everything out. I'm not paying for your wedding. I'm not taking out loans, not hosting events I never agreed to. This house is my security and my future. I worked for it. I sacrificed for it. I will not sign away a single brick so you can impress strangers online. If that makes me the villain in your stories, then so be it. His face went red with anger. You're choosing money over your son, he said. I looked him straight in the eyes. No, I'm choosing self-respect over being used. He muttered, Melissa was right about you, under his breath. The words ripped through me. But they also lit something inside me. For years, I had been the dependable background character in my own life. This was the moment I finally stepped into the lead role. Then came the part they never saw coming, my quiet, devastating revenge. Not the fiery movie kind. Something far more real. I told him I will not be attending the wedding. He stared like I'd just confessed to a crime. You're kidding. You're going to embarrass me like that? People will ask questions. I nodded. Yes, and you can tell them the truth. Your mother refused to be disrespected and used for her money. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd soften. Maybe he'd remember who I was to him. But instead he shot up from his chair and spat. If you're not coming, don't bother calling me again. The words clawed at my chest, but I stayed still. Steady? If that's your choice, I said, I respect it. Then I added, quietly, leave your key on the counter. After he stormed out, I changed the locks, added extra security to my accounts. I spoke to a lawyer not out of spite, but out of self-protection. I updated my will. Instead of everything going straight to Daniel, I created a trust. Money to charity, some to younger cousins who had shown kindness, and Daniel. Well, he got a small symbolic amount. Enough to say I remembered him, but not enough to be anyone's ticket to comfort. When the wedding day came, I didn't force myself into a dress or sit in a pew pretending everything was fine. I made myself a cup of tea, sat in my quiet living room, and listened to stories online about toxic families and entitled demands. I realized I wasn't alone, and for the first time, the thought of what my son might be saying about me didn't break me. It barely registered. Weeks passed, then months. A mutual friend mentioned that Melissa was furious I didn't show up because it made them look bad. Her perfect family image had a glaring crack. People whispered. Questions were asked. And the biggest blotho one they never saw coming was simple. The inheritance they counted on drifted even further from their reach. I won't pretend any of this was easy. Holidays were quiet. Birthdays stung. I'd look at old photos of Daniel missing baby teeth, superhero pajamas, and cry until my eyes ached. This isn't a neat revenge fantasy with a perfect ending. This is a real story. A hard story. A story about finally deciding that standing alone with your self-respect is better than standing with people who only love what you can give them. About a year later, something unexpected happened. I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. It's an actual handwritten letter. It was from Daniel. He said things had gotten hard. Melissa didn't like that her lifestyle had limits. She'd expected more gifts, more vacations, more help from me. They'd had fights about money, about why your mom can't just step in a little. He admitted he'd repeated that it's just money line to her more than once. And now he finally understood how ugly it sounded. He apologized. Not perfectly, not in the way that magically fixes everything, but enough that I could feel the weight behind the words. He wrote, "I thought you were being selfish. Now I see I was the one being selfish. I let my wife disrespect you. I disrespected you." He asked if there was any way we could talk. My hands trembled as I read that page over and over. I could have thrown it away. I could have said, "Too late." That would have been a different kind of revenge, one some people might find satisfying in a Reddit AITA thread. Instead, I did the hardest thing. I agreed to meet but on my terms. We met in a neutral place, a small coffee shop, not in my house. Before he even sat down, I told him, if this conversation turns into you defending Melissa's behavior or trying to guilt me, I will get up and leave. He nodded, eyes red, and said, "I know." For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the man who parroted his wife's entitlement. The boy who used to say, "Mom, do you need help?" without being asked. We talked for hours. He didn't try to minimize what happened. He didn't say, "That's just how she is," or "You're both to blame." He owned it. He said, "I let my wife talk about you like you were an obstacle, not a person. I thought providing meant money, not respect. I was wrong. I listened." I cried. I told him how small he'd made me feel in my own home. How violated I felt when Melissa went through my finances. How deeply it cut when he called me selfish after everything I'd given up. At the end of the conversation, I didn't promise a perfect reconciliation. I told him the truth. "I love you. I always will. I'm willing to try again, but I will not put myself back in a place where your wife can disrespect me and you stay silent. If you want me in your life, you will protect that boundary even if she doesn't like it." He nodded, tears streaming now, and whispered, "I will. I promise. Only time will tell if that's true. But here's what I know for sure. So when people ask, how could you skip your own son's wedding? This is the answer. My son let his wife disrespect me. Over and over. He chose comfort over courage, silence over standing up for the woman who raised him. And when the time came, I chose to walk away, not to punish him, but to protect what little peace I had left. If that makes me the villain in someone else's story, so be it. In mine, it's the first time I finally became the hero. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in this situation? And don't forget to subscribe to Golden Years Diary for more stories like this.